You're paying $12 for artisan rye bread. Medieval peasants had it for free, and theirs was better. Let that land for a second. Medieval peasants ate up to 3 pounds of rye bread every single day. Not a slice, not a sandwich, 3 pounds daily. No diabetes epidemic, no gluten crisis, no gut disease outbreak. You eat 1 slice of modern wheat bread and your energy crashes before noon. So ask yourself the only question that matters: what changed? Something did change, and the industry has spent decades hoping you never ask about it. This video shows you exactly what medieval peasants in England, Germany, and Scandinavia were eating between 1200 and 1500 CE, and why that bread is nutritionally superior to anything on your grocery store shelf right now. Stay with me, because at the end, I'm going to tell you about something even more powerful than the bread itself. Something medieval kitchens used to preserve food for an entire year without refrigeration. That's the next video. Don't skip ahead. Start with the grain, because this is where the story begins, and where the modern food industry hopes you never look. Medieval rye is not the same thing as the wheat inside your supermarket bread, not even close. Modern wheat has been hybridized and engineered for one purpose: yield. Farmers need crops that grow fast, grow large, and survive industrial harvesting. Nutritional density was never part of the design brief. Profit was. Medieval rye was grown in its near-original genetic state. It had not been tampered with. It had not been optimized for a factory floor. It was a grain that evolved alongside human digestion over thousands of years, and it performed that function extraordinarily well. Here is what rye does inside your body that modern hybrid wheat does not. Rye carries significantly higher fiber content than wheat, not marginally higher, but meaningfully so. That fiber slows the absorption of sugars into your bloodstream. Your blood sugar does not spike, your insulin does not surge, your energy does not collapse. You stay full longer because your body is processing something with genuine substance. Rye also has a lower glycemic index than wheat. When you eat it, your blood sugar climbs gradually and steadily. That is the difference between sustained productive energy and the mid-morning wall you hit after processed cereal or a slice of commercial white bread. Rye contains a specific type of dietary fiber called arabinoxylan. This fiber directly feeds beneficial gut bacteria. It functions as a prebiotic. Your gut microbiome thrives on it. Modern wheat bread, stripped and processed, gives your gut almost nothing to work with. You are feeding yourself calories. You are not feeding your biology. And here is the myth you were almost certainly sold. Gluten is the enemy. Wrong. Gluten is not the problem. What has been done to the grain that contains gluten is the problem. Modern wheat has been engineered to carry a substantially higher gluten concentration because it makes industrial dough easier to handle, faster to rise, and more consistent at scale. That engineering serves the bakery. It does not serve your gut. The gluten load in modern wheat is far beyond anything medieval people ever consumed. Your digestive system did not evolve to process the industrial version. Medieval peasants were not avoiding gluten. They ate bread at every meal, every day, as their primary calorie source. They were not just surviving, they were fueling physically grueling days on bodies powered by rye. The grain changed. Your body did not. Now you understand the grain. But the grain is only part of the story. What happens to that grain before it becomes flour determines whether you are eating food or eating filler. Medieval grain was stone-milled. This is not a picturesque historical detail. It is a functional one with direct nutritional consequences. When grain is milled between two stones, the process is slow and generates minimal heat.
The grain is crushed in a way that keeps the bran and the germ fully intact within the flour. The result is genuine whole grain flour, not because a label claims it, but because the entire grain is actually present. The bran is the outer layer of the kernel. It contains fiber, B vitamins, and essential minerals. The germ is the embryo of the kernel. It contains vitamin E, essential fatty acids, and additional B vitamins. Together, they are where nearly all of the grain's nutritional value lives. In the 1870s, industrial roller milling was introduced. It was faster. It was cheaper at scale. It produced a finer, whiter flour that a newly aspirational middle class found desirable because white bread had historically signaled wealth and social status. And it stripped the bran and the germ completely out of the flour. What remained was the endosperm, pure starch, negligible fiber, near zero vitamins, near zero minerals. It was cheap to produce, it had a longer shelf life because the germ's natural fats were no longer present to go rancid, and it was nutritionally bankrupt. This is why within decades of roller milling becoming the industrial standard, governments in the United States and United Kingdom began mandating that iron, niacin, thiamine, and riboflavin be artificially reintroduced into refined white flour. They called the process enrichment. What they were actually doing was replacing, in synthetic form, a fraction of what had been deliberately removed. When your bread label reads enriched flour, that is not a nutritional upgrade. That is a confession. The manufacturer stripped out the nutrition, then patched it back in with a laboratory substitute. Medieval flour required no such intervention. The miller ground the grain, the flour contained the entire grain, the bread delivered everything that grain had to offer, automatically, inherently, without fortification. And when you see whole grain on a modern package, read past the label. Many products marketed as whole grain are made predominantly from refined flour with a small percentage of whole grain blended back in to legally qualify for the claim. The FDA's labeling threshold for whole grain does not mean what most people assume it means. Medieval bread had no label. It was bread, the whole thing exactly as the grain intended. Here is the part that should permanently change how you think about bread. And this is precisely the step the modern food industry eliminated, because it takes time they are unwilling to spend and costs money they are unwilling to absorb. Medieval bread was leavened through natural fermentation. There was no commercial yeast, no rapid rise packet, no shortcut. There was a sourdough starter, a living, active culture of wild yeast and lactic acid bacteria, and the dough fermented for a minimum of 24 hours, frequently longer. That fermentation process transforms the grain in 3 measurable ways. First, it pre-digests the flour. The bacteria and wild yeast break down complex carbohydrates in the grain before those carbohydrates ever reach your digestive system. Your body receives food that has already been partially processed, which reduces the digestive burden, lowers blood sugar impact, and dramatically improves nutrient absorption. You get more from every bite because the fermentation already did part of the work. Second, it eliminates the majority of phytic acid. Grains naturally contain phytates, compounds sometimes called antinutrients, because they bind to minerals like zinc, magnesium, and iron, and block your body from absorbing them. Long fermentation breaks phytic acid down significantly. This means the minerals inside medieval rye bread were genuinely bioavailable. Your body absorbed them. In modern rapid rise bread, phytic acid remains largely intact. The minerals are technically present on the label. They pass through you unused. Third, fermentation produces lactic and acetic acids that lower the bread's pH. This acidification alters how the starches behave, further reducing the glycemic index. It also functions as a natural preservative, which is why authentic sourdough resists mold far longer than its commercial counterpart without a single chemical additive. Medieval rye bakers did not understand microbiology, but they treated their sourdough starters as irreplaceable household assets, because without the starter, there was no bread. Those cultures were maintained across generations. Some bakers working today use starters that are decades old. The science behind it is ancient. The results are quantifiable and well documented. Now look at what sits in your grocery store. Commercial bread is made with a single engineered yeast strain, Saccharomyces cerevisiae, the same fast-acting dry yeast you find in every supermarket baking aisle. It generates carbon dioxide to inflate the dough. That is the entirety of its function. There is no fermentation of the grain, no reduction of phytic acid, no pre-digestion, no lowering of the glycemic index. The bread rises, bakes, ships, and sells. Your gut absorbs the consequences. Medieval rye sourdough had 3 ingredients: rye flour, water, salt. That is the complete list. 3 substances from nature. 3 things the human digestive system has been processing for thousands of years. Now contrast that with what you are actually buying. Now read the label on a standard commercial wheat loaf from your grocery store. You will find between 20 and 30 ingredients depending on the brand. You will find enriched flour, refined grain with synthetic vitamins reintroduced. You will find high fructose corn syrup or added sugar because stripped bread has no natural sweetness, and sugar is engineered to compel repeat consumption. You will find soybean oil or canola oil for moisture and texture. You will find monoglycerides and diglycerides, emulsifiers that soften the crumb and extend shelf life. You will find calcium propionate or potassium sorbate, chemical mold inhibitors that allow a loaf to travel on a truck, sit in a warehouse, and occupy a shelf for weeks without visible spoilage. You will find Azodicarbonamide, a dough conditioner banned across the European Union and Australia that remains fully legal in the United States. Not one of those additions exists for your benefit. Every single one serves industrial production, cost reduction, shelf life extension, or the manufactured palatability that keeps you buying. When you pay $12 for artisan bread, you are paying for the removal of everything on that list. You are paying to eat the way a medieval peasant ate for free. You are paying to access food your body was built to process before the industry decided profit margins outranked nutritional integrity. That should make you angry. Let it. Before I get to what comes next, I want to know what bread you are currently eating. Drop it in the comments. Store-bought? Homemade? A sourdough you've been nursing for months? A recipe from your grandmother? Tell me. I read every single one, and I answer more than you'd expect. Here is what this video demands you walk away knowing. Medieval rye peasants were not primitive. They were not nutritionally deficient. They were not making do with inferior food because nothing better existed. They built a grain-based diet around whole rye, stone-milled flour, and long fermentation that outperforms the majority of what lines your grocery store shelves today. The science supports it. The historical record confirms it. The reason you were never taught this is straightforward. Teaching it is not profitable for the companies selling you a 30-ingredient loaf at $4. But here's the thing. The bread was not the most powerful tool in the medieval kitchen. There was something else entirely. Something that households across Northern Europe used to preserve food for a full year, without refrigeration, without electricity, without any technology beyond what existed 8 centuries ago. The method worked so effectively that nutritionists, gastroenterologists, and fermentation researchers are actively rediscovering and publishing on it right now. The next video reveals exactly what it was, how it functioned, and why your dependence on a refrigerator has made you reliant on a system that is measurably less effective than what peasants solved in the Middle Ages. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and send this video to one person who still believes modern food is an improvement.